Hello and welcome to our first guest episode of this season on Color Commentary. And today we are in for a treat. First off, we have your all-time favorite guest host with a voice like butter, Dr. Matt Kohler joining me today. How are you, Matt? My husband.
Hey, I'm pretty good. Excited to be back. Excited for the guests we have. I'll start off the new season with you by your side.
Okay. For our day one listeners who have encouraged us from our previous marriage reflections, you know that part of our journey involved some struggles within the church as well. And we wanted to share with you today a huge praise report with so much joy and gratitude to God for providing a community here in Dallas that we are blessed to call our home. With that, Matt made sure he was on for today's episode as we get to welcome our leaders, Pastor Yoon and Becky Lee, onto the pod to share the journey that led them to this point as church planters here in Dallas.
So we have Pastor Yoon and Becky, his wife Becky, and they together have led various ministries from education to missions. Pastor Yoon was a lead pastor and head of an international ministry that was responsible for 6 different language ministries with over 40 nationalities, while working with and currently part of international organizations such as Lausanne Movement and the World Evangelical Alliance. Just before they came to Dallas to plant the Blessing Church, Pastor Yoon was at Tapestry, LA as the missions pastor, leading both local and global missions, and also spent a year at the Church of Southland where he served as an associate pastor while Becky led worship. Together, they enjoy the simple and slow things by helping create space for people to be themselves, and we have definitely felt that presence cultivated in the short time that we've known them. So, without further ado, welcome you both.
Welcome!
Hi! You know, Matt, your voice is like butter. I feel really
I've heard that
smooth.
too, yeah.
Thank you. I agree.
He never listens to any episode that has his voice.
Yeah,
on.
I actually hate it.
Yeah.
I hate even listening to like our vows because I don't like hearing myself say them. I hate listening to myself on recording.
Do you like listening to your sermons?
I hate it.
For the voice part or just in all the
it's just
insight?
like cringe overall. Like, so I don't watch myself or listen to myself.
Interesting. What about, do you like listening to your singing voice?
No, I don't like listening to myself at all.
Am I the only one then?
Yeah, that says something about you, probably.
Yeah, probably. Anyway, so Pastor Yoon, you and Becky are now our appointed spiritual leaders, but we also just met. Matt shared some of y'all's facts, but can you share who exactly is Yoon Lee, the man behind the black tea? Just spitting bars.
It's actually, yeah. So, if you guys come and visit, I'm probably 90% sure I'll be wearing a black t-shirt. And
As today?
as I am today, I got to stay true to form. Actually, I got a Christmas present from you guys. It was a very nice black t-shirt, and I try to wear that as much as possible. Yeah, for me, aside from everything that you guys mentioned, I'm actually originally from Chicago, so I'm a Chicago guy. And then after college, I came out to LA, or I went out to LA and spent about 8 years out there doing ministry and seminary. I met a lovely lady out there, and she just was head over heels for me.
Oh.
No, it was a long journey, long process. And so we got married out there. We got married in 2009. I got ordained in 2009. And 3 years later in 2012, the church that I was a part of, or the denomination, they invited us to come out to Korea and, be part of the ministries that Matt had mentioned. Other things, I'm kind of I think the biggest compliment that I've gotten was from my brother-in-law. He's also a church planter in Montreal. And he said that I was hipster before it was a thing. So, so I'm just into the slow things like sourdough. I was trying that a long time ago, like kefir, roasting my own coffee, and all those things. Not because I was cool, but because I was broke, and you needed to figure out a way how to do these things without much money. So yeah, I'm kind of quirky like that.
What made you even want to go on this path? I know you're a PK. Mm-hmm. Did that at all ever make you not want to be on this path, or was that I like what I saw and I want to also do?
That's really interesting. So my father, he was, and he still is a pastor. He's 74 years old now, and then he just started another church at the age of 70. So he's still going strong. I think for me, my dad being a pastor didn't really, it wasn't something that I was like, oh yeah, I want to be a pastor too, like my dad. It was something I respected. It was a life that I really enjoyed, but it wasn't like, okay, I'm going to be a pastor myself. But for me, my journey was more through realizing that I wanted to disciple people. And initially I thought that I would disciple people through being a teacher and a football coach. And so my first year in college, I was an English lit major. I was playing football on the team. It might be an oxymoron, yeah, like a jog reading Shakespeare. And, the first year I really struggled through my courses. Like I'm a slow reader. Matt's probably a great fast reader. I really don't have a critical lens as far as like English lit, and that's what you need. Also with football too, I realized I didn't really like football. In the middle of that first year, my freshman year in college playing, I realized I didn't really enjoy it. And so I kind of sat down and took some time to process and pray. And I was like, God, why do I want to go back to my old high school and become a football coach and English teacher? And he kind of revealed to me that it wasn't English or football, but I wanted to shape people. I wanted to disciple them. And at that time, I was at a school called Wheaton College outside of Chicago, and it's a Christian school, Christian liberal arts school, and they really have a really strong biblical studies department. And he kind of showed me and said to me, "There's nothing better than Scripture. There's nothing better to shape people with than Scripture." And so that's when I became a biblical studies major, and ever since then, it just took off. Even the most dense of materials and courses, it was just so engaging. And I had the classic nerdy professors. One of my professors literally had the glasses, bow ties, and suspenders, and he was an Old Testament archaeology type. And even that class, I was like, oh my gosh, God is so amazing,
Wow.
And I think before, the 66 books of the Bible, they were just like a random collection of books put together. But after studying it in undergrad, it became one story of God's redemptive love for his people. And so, so all that to say, my dad being a pastor didn't really influence me. And funny enough, I actually got to work under my dad after college when I was in seminary. And he hired me onto his staff. And as we would go home, he'd try to convince me to do another profession. He'd be like, hey, why don't you become a lawyer or a doctor? And I'm like, Dad, you hired me. This is kind of weird. You hired me, but you're trying to get me to go into another path. Yeah, so not really my dad, but really I just felt like God put that in my heart, and I realized that throughout college. So yeah.
It's interesting. I kind of had a conviction moment because we were talking earlier that I love fantasy books so much because I get lost in the world, and the world's so appealing to me, and I see I picture this place that just feels exciting to be in. And I just was picturing myself reading scripture and even being a part of that world and seeing Jesus and the, quote unquote magical, but powerful things he does. And I don't get lost in that in the same way. And I think, but really, I think it's a good reflection point for me of why that is, what's missing in me that doesn't feel that in something that was a very real and the most important thing that I could be immersing myself in. Yeah, I don't know, random side thought that I felt convicted about.
Well, I feel like Matt's going to read the whole Bible tonight.
I know.
Cover to cover.
Bible challenge. Okay, well, I don't know if this is super applicable, but we're going to reveal a part of you here on the podcast since we are doing kind of in the lens of the Enneagram. And Pastor Yoon, you are an drumroll, Enneagram.
1 wing 9 or 9 wing 1. I'm not sure. It's like chicken and the egg. I'm not sure which comes first.
We're gonna go with the 1 today, but even as you guys listen, and if you guys want to collaborate and say, no, I think Pastor Yoon's a 9, we're open, right? We're open for both Pastor Yoon and Becky, I think.
Yeah.
But as an Enneagram 1 child, there might have been an internalized message of it is not okay to make mistakes. And I was curious if this was something that resonated with you at all. If so, do you have a memory you can share?
Yeah, actually, fun little tidbit before we start. I thought the Enneagram was pronounced Enneagram. I thought it was
until
French.
Today?
No, until actually kind of recently.
Okay, I was until this very moment.
So I kept on calling it the Enneagram, kind of like I call Lululemon. And so
these are all very hipster things.
Yeah, I'm going to set the trend. But I think just that whole idea of it's not okay to make mistakes. So looking back in my own life, I'm not sure if I was a one to begin with or if I learned how to be a one, but I definitely, like, growing up, my parents were immigrant parents, and a lot of times in the immigrant household, there's it can get turbulent because your parents are trying to adjust to a new culture, a new country, and my dad was church planting at the same time, and so I realized that, like, to make a mistake just added to that turbulence, and so I would try to not rock the boat, and so I think for me, like, to make a mistake, whether it be like at school or just at home, that wasn't okay. I think my parents would, obviously they would try to parent us, but then internally I realized, you know what, I'm just going to try to stick to the rules and then everything will turn out to be okay. But I think also as a 9, it's also like that peacekeeping harmony type thing going on there too. So I think, and so I think growing up, I definitely did have that internalized in me pretty early, yeah.
It's kind of cool to hear that it's not just the pastor part, but the church planting DNA strand of that as well. Is there things that you try to do differently today because it seemed like a more turbulent atmosphere in that sense?
Yeah, I would say I've gone through a long journey now. So I've been in ministry since 2004. And I think being a one is great. Like creating order and structure, and we're all about redeeming the good, and we're reformers and all that. But then I think, like most things, wisdom speaks to you and it shows you when to apply yourself and when to withdraw. And I think if I were just like a one all the time, I'd make church very difficult for a lot of people. And I probably wouldn't be enjoying ministry at all. And so I think throughout the journey, God has actually broken me out of this like tight oneness identity and showed me that like he can work outside of the one. I've shared examples with Becky in the past. So I was formerly a pastor at the world's largest church. We had 800,000 members, and I was in charge of this one trip where our senior pastor and all of our elders were visiting Chicago. We're actually visiting my old school. I was in charge of all the hotel bookings and all the trips, yada, yada, yada. And it seemed like that week, everything failed. Like everything just blew up in my face. And then I remember thinking, because I'm the one that picked the hotel. On that whole block where all the hotels were, our hotel was the only hotel where the power went out. And then we had to get to a meeting at 7 a.m. All the lights are out. There's no power. No one can really get ready. The head elder came down and he's like looking, he's looking for blood. He's like, what's going on? And I just remember thinking, like, I can't turn the power on. Like, and I think God was whispering to me, he's like, Yoon, this is outside of your control. Like, you can try to control things. You can try to make order and structure, but it's ultimately, I'm in control. And that's kind of like one negative example, but positive examples are like when God does amazing things outside of things that I plan or outside of my oneness, he still works. And so I think right now, at this stage of ministry in my life, being a one is good, but at the same time, I think I'm now wise enough to know when to apply that and when to just like hang back a bit. Yeah. So I don't know if that actually answers the question. I probably would.
No, that's beautiful. There's a part, I think, talking later of just how you guys want to set that culture here and learning more about that. But I think it's so important that we look at the Enneagram to see it as a tool, but then not make it everything about us. Yeah. So I love that that's already something you've reflected on and implemented as a one would.
Yeah. Well, transitioning to Becky for a little. The opportunity to fill in the gaps of this story of you just, deeply pursuing, Yoon. But also, no, it's interesting because we met you all just a few months ago, right? We've only ever known you on this role. So I think it's easy for me to think that, like Becky must have always felt this huge calling to like be a leader in the church and to be a pastor's wife. And you have like a very strong presence of being both a leader and like a supporter. I feel like you do both things just really well. So that's like, I see you that way. But curious if you always saw yourself in any sort of like this kind of role, or if life really maybe took you in a different direction than you initially thought. And then I guess separately from that, just how, your husband's kind of, his calling challenged you and kind of grew you in your own calling.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much for seeing me that way. I never feel like I've, stepped into that role, but I think my mom's always prayed for me to become a pastor's wife, so it wasn't a surprise when I got married to a pastor. It's only because her mom wanted my mom to be a pastor's wife, and my mom refused. proposed. And then she said, but I promise
She put it upon you.
Yeah. And then her prayers were so strong that both my sister and I are both.
That's true.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I'm like, Mom, your prayers are too strong. Yeah. But yeah, so it wasn't a surprise when I got married to him, but of course you don't know what the journey, is like ahead of you. But there was this one point at the beginning of our marriage where we went to like our mentors, and I posed this question. I said, okay, now I'm a pastor's wife. How can I look the part? And she straight up, this older wise woman, she said, what are you talking about? You're not supposed to be this cookie cutter person. You are you, and you just happen to have to wear a couple more hats, and you keep your relationship with the Lord going, and then you're just responsible for a couple more things. And it really liberated me from having to look a certain part. And it freed me from expecting other pastors' wives to look a certain part. It's just, so I think that's helped shaped like the beginning of our marriage. And then I think just the way that he's been called to ministry, it's helped me in so many ways. I think on a very basic level, you're always having to do stuff with the church. And so when your feelings come in the way, and you'll find out what I am later, maybe you'll pick up on it now, but your feelings you have to put aside, and you just have to do what comes with the territory. And so there was a lot of navigating of, I'm feeling this and I want to be seen, and yet I know that I need to put it aside. And that's really hard, because this day and age, it's all about self-care, and I need my boundaries, and I need this. And really, when God calls you to marry somebody like a pastor, whoever it is, you have to just kind of suck it up and just do what comes with the territory. And so that's shaped me to become more creative in how I have my outlets. It's helped me to put my emotions aside, which is something I needed to work on. I didn't know I needed to. So that's all just on the personal level. I mean, spiritually too, it's helped me grow so much. Just getting to know how he experiences God is so different from the way that I experience God. And so that's a whole nother topic too. But I'm so blessed by just watching him lead us as a family and the church. So
I don't know. It's just such a strong identity, I feel like pastor's wife. Do those feel very separate, like your identity as a pastor's wife and your identity as like you in the rest of your life? Or have you like learned how to merge those to feel kind of like united in like a single identity?
That's a great question.
Thank you.
I've been asked that before. Yeah, it's, you know what, now that you're asking me it, I feel like it's now become like a part of who I am. I think I'm the same person I am at church as I am in my workplace. Yeah, I feel like it's merged. I don't turn it on or off anywhere I go.
That's good. Yeah, that's probably tough, or at least takes practice, time. I don't know. But yeah, no, that's cool.
Well, I kind of want to reveal the Enneagram part right now, because I feel like what you were saying really clicked in the sense of you were going between two numbers when we recently talked about it, but it's almost like you had to transform into that because you were actively putting your emotions aside from what you were sharing. Because for Enneagram 4, which is what you initially typed, is very in tune with emotions and aware of emotions, right? And beauty and creating and like being that like seen in those ways. However, even as I was listening to you, there was a part of you that almost felt like those things had to not be there because of the role you are in, right? And there are so many things you guys have to face in ministry. And 7s actually like hide or like suppress or say no to any pain or emotion. And so that's kind of interesting to hear. And so maybe while you're still a 4 at heart, a lot of your outwardly behaviors now portray more of that 7 that you were sharing earlier. But anyways, all that to say, I believe Becky's a Enneagram 4 or 7, so you guys can kind of also be open to sharing what you think. But an Enneagram 1 and an Enneagram 4, if you guys know about the paths, so there's a stress path and a growth path of how you guys kind of resemble certain character traits in those times in your season. And so you guys are in each other's paths. How cool is that?
When I'm healthy, I go to a 1. And when you're healthy, where do you go? When you're unhealthy?
I don't know.
So 1,
I go to God.
You go to Amen. That was a trick question. 7 actually.
Oh, okay.
But the cool thing about
I see, yeah.
but unhealthy could be a 4. But the cool thing about what I'm learning is ultimate healthy would be a healthy 4. So like in your stress, you might resemble the stressful parts of a 4, but when you are even more healthier than the growth path of a 7, you actually would resemble the most healthiest parts of a 4, which is Becky. So kind of like not to dwell too much on the 1 and 4 and all those path parts, but how do you guys complement each other? Because it already sounds like with emotions or other things, you guys would be very different. Over the years in ministry, how have you guys been that team for each other?
I was thinking about this because I think not only in ministry, but just in our relationship. So I think in the beginning, I was a very strong 1 and just about principle and work and, getting things right. And then, she was a 4, like getting in tune with the feelings that are in front of her and
might I interject? We had
We're seeing Becky shake her head.
We we listened to an Enneagram coach, like a professional, and she said that he said, how is the relationship between 4 and a 1? And she said that's actually the hardest combination ever. So I'm sorry, keep going. Like we'll tell you the good parts, but at the beginning of marriage, it was really hard.
I would imagine so.
And so I think for me, like I have very few emotions, or maybe just a couple that are very deep. So I think I realized that I am an emotional person. They're just like, they're deep in there. But I think throughout our 13, 14 years of marriage, we've actually drawn the other aspects of ourselves out. So I think for me, Becky has drawn out, so, she's like a 4 and a 7. I think she's really drawn out that playfulness in me. And I think she's given me an environment where it's okay to feel certain things. And I think one thing that I really appreciate about her is, she would ask me, oh, how do you feel about this? Or, what's your emotional state and all that. I think as I've been growing in my own emotional journey, she's made it feel safe for me to express, to there's like no wrong emotion. Like I can just feel what I feel. And she trusts that that's part of my spiritual growth and process. And so I think throughout the past 13, 14 years, like I've been tapping into that, but also like I've also been more playful because, ones don't know playful or emotions. We just know like principles and getting things done. So actually, I think I've been more healthy or I've been healthier. Yeah.
He's gotten silly.
Oh.
Nice.
What does that look like?
I know, right?
You don't want to.
Is there egg yolk in that?
No, not the egg yolk, but he'll just crack a lot more jokes. Yeah.
You smile a lot, I notice.
You can smile.
No, but right, I think. No, it's something that actually has stood out. Like I've actually
I've noticed that too. Actually, we've never talked about this ourselves.
A lot of
other
guys smile, or especially other pastors. I don't really have any follow-up to that. Just an observation.
I would echo that observation, and I've noted that too. I was like, oh, I like it when Pastor Yoon smiles. So there's probably some depth to that in the work you've done together.
I receive it.
Yeah, I think like for me as a 4, I heard in another podcast that 4 struggle with the ping pong between the head and the heart, and they never actually put it into action. And so I think for him being a 1, he's really good at creating systems and orders for me. And so I think even in the house, if I'm thinking about something and I'm convicted by something, but I never get around to it, he'll help me process it, and then he'll help me to find like a solution for it, which I don't know, is really helpful. Like one example is, I never know how far to park the car in the garage. And he just said, hey, I have a really great idea. He put painter's tape right where your eyes are supposed to be when you park. Wow. And it's just one less thing to think about, but it's those little stressors that kind of get in the way of your flow, right? And so I appreciate those little things that he does. And I think one more thing is that when we first got married, I couldn't see beyond his detail-orientedness. Like he was so, for lack of a better word, he was so nitpicky. And I used the word suffocating more in that year than like ever in my life. Yeah. And I was like, and my upbringing is I could do no wrong in my dad and my mom's eyes. Like I was always encouraged, right? And he's like, why did you do it that way? Why did you do it that way? Why, and do it this way, double check this. And I'm like, oh my gosh, But I think after, many years of being in ministry with him, I began to see that his detailed orientedness creates order for something bigger. So like for the ministry, for the worship space, everything that you see at the church, like at the Blessing Church too, there's a reason why the lights get turned off at a certain time. And there's a reason why songs are kind of picked in a certain way. Not that he picks the songs, but there's intention behind everything. And I think I appreciate that more than seeing him being nitpicky. There's a reason for the detail. He cares about the people and he cares about the space. And so I appreciate that now, even though I couldn't see it when we first got married. Yeah. So
I'm hearing a lot of qualities in Pastor Yoon that I feel like you wish I had. This is what's coming to my mind.
The painters did
that. Yeah. Really good, really helpful. So
it's funny, like, because I think for ones, and I'm gonna speak on behalf of all my one brothers and sisters out there, like details in order, it really provides life. And so I think I think when we're unhealthy, we just look at the principle or the rules or the structure. But when we're healthy, we provide these things that hopefully provide life and goodness. And so, like, one little thing, when we're at a church right now, we were at a very small, like, recreation room. And so the biggest thing is, I think for me, is for people to feel welcome, to have fellowship with each other. And so in the first couple of weeks, it's really tight. And I think people were trying to be helpful. And so they just started stacking the chairs and putting them away right after service. And I had to tell all the volunteers, don't put the chairs away. And they're kind of thinking like, wait, I'm trying to be helpful. Like, why are you telling me not to put the chairs away? Because for me, yeah, it's nice to have, all the chairs put away. But putting chairs away is a visual cue that we're all done. And it makes the newcomer kind of feel like, oh, I got to leave right now. Whereas I want people to mingle. And so a little thing like not telling people, hey, don't put those chairs away yet. It can sound nitpicky, like, why? Well, we're just trying to help. But I'm thinking of the guy who just came in, and there's usually about a 1 or 2 minute window where people will linger just so that they can engage in conversation. But once that window passes, they're kind of gone, and they may not return. They may have said, I'm going to give it a shot this Sunday. I'm going to just put myself out there. But if we're preoccupied with putting chairs away, that guy or that girl who came out, they may not engage in relationships. So all those little things, there's always a bigger reason for it, So
I think that's so important because not that we are an Asian church, but it is like starting off with that's the heavier ethnicity, right? And for Asians, right, doing or like let's help, let's clean up. For you to be able to see that and then say that is important for members who would have to, like you said, believe they're doing the right thing or the helpful thing.
Yeah.
But big picture, what is more helpful or what is more powerful, which is, loving on the newcomers.
Yeah,
so I did notice that too. I was like, interesting, because you would then say it after the announcements, like make sure no one puts it up and like, oh, okay. And then that freedom to mingle becomes available.
Yeah. Obviously, I think you guys have shared how you guys have been like shaped by each other, by your experiences. And right, so many years of that is, you being like a pastor and you guys having experience within the church. I'm just curious, now that your role has shifted to church plant leader, still a pastor, but almost like the big thing right now is like establishing a new church. Like how different has that looked and felt, whether it's like challenges or just different ways of thinking or approaching? Just curious how, kind of what that shift has been like in y'all's mindset and in how you guys are doing that together.
Because this is your first church plant together, correct?
First church plant, yes. It's interesting because I meet up occasionally with a church planting kind of guru guy in the Texas area. He started Exponential. Exponential is probably one of the largest church planting networks in America. And then he came here and he's starting another one called Nexus. And we got connected through a mutual contact. And just a few weeks ago, he asked me how the church plant was going. And I told him, we're at this place and, there are this many people coming and, offering looks like this and we have this set up. And he was like, oh, how many months have you guys been up and running? I'm like, oh, maybe 2 months. And he's like, and he looked at me, he's like, that's very unusual for a church plant. I'm like, why is that? He's like, usually right now at 2 months, you should be knocking on doors and like just handing out flyers. And you shouldn't be at where you are right now. And so what I took from that was I realized that we were just really fortunate, a better word is we were really blessed to already have a group of families and a group of people that wanted to do church and right away. And so I was ready for the grind. I was ready to just, get to work and face a lot of challenges, but it's just really, I'll use the word enjoyable. The past 3 months has really been enjoyable. And so I know that this is not the typical church plant phasing and timeline, but I've been enjoying it. Yeah.
Would you say the same?
Yes. Yeah, it's been really
Good.
Yeah.
So I guess that's a good segue into sharing the church plant. What's the name? What's the certain hard facts? And then more broader is people might want to know denomination or AMI. What is that? Or vision, logistic things like that. So I wanted to start there before then we ask some more deeper questions within it. For someone that's listening to this and wants to kind of know what they can expect in the elevator pitch, what would you guys share?
Yeah. So the name of the church is the Blessing Church. We are a church for the greater Dallas area, and we just had our soft launch, and we're going to have our hard launch in February 26th.
Mark your calendar.
Mark your calendars. And so I think the differentiation between hard launch and soft launch, honestly, it's more mentality. And we're kind of giving ourselves room and grace to make mistakes right now. And so, yeah, we're in soft launch phase, but even though it already feels like a church that's just up and running, we're part of a family of churches, and we're very specific in that wording. We're not part of a denomination, we're not a network, but we are a family of churches, and we actually have close to 20 churches domestic and a lot of missionaries abroad. And yeah, we are in one spirit. We are very mission-minded. We're scripture-based. And so I think one big phrase that we like to use for ourselves is radical middle, meaning both scripture and the Holy Spirit. We want to be focused on growth within, but also serving those who are without. We want to be domestic and international. And so, yeah, it's just a very vibrant family. It is a family. We had one of our pastors come this past weekend, and he kind of feels like an uncle. I had him over at our house, and we stayed up till almost 2:00 in the morning just talking. And now we're going to do monthly check-ins. And so it's just been really great.
How do you feel like he's been moving for Dallas specifically as you guys have now established here? And even the surprise of it is still a grind, and it's probably going to be a harder grind as we grow. But even with that surprise, what are some other ways that God's been revealing how he might be working with you guys in Dallas?
It was interesting. Dallas wasn't even on the radar.
Right.
I knew that I would be church planting back in late 2019, early 2020. I just didn't know where. And I kind of was trying to pitch the idea to our sending church of staying in California, because our sending church is Tapestry Los Angeles Church, and I was talking to Pastor Charles, and I was pitching these ideas of being in somewhere else in Southern California, and largely because California's a great place. My wife grew up there. I spent a lot of my adult life there, but our family was there. Funny thing is, though, within that year or so, our family started moving out of California, and my brother who lived down the street, he was like, "Oh, I don't think I'm going to stay here either." And so that was all right, well, they're not going to be here. And then Pastor Charles he's like, "Have you ever thought about Dallas, Texas?" And I'm like, "No, I've never thought about Dallas, Texas." And it was funny because he's like, I've got a sister there, and my nephew was like, Uncle Charles, Dallas could use an AMI church. And so Dallas came on the radar. We started having conversations with people. We took vision trips out, and we really began to see, oh my gosh, God is really doing something in Dallas, in the greater Dallas area in North Texas. Just a few facts to throw out there. I don't know if you guys listen to Freakonomics, the podcast, but they had a 2-part special on why everyone's moving to Dallas. And right now, and I think it's safe to say that currently Dallas is still the fastest growing area in the States. Some people say even worldwide it might be up there. As I came out here and I was talking to local pastors, this one pastor, actually he's not a friend of mine, Pastor Peter Park from Chase Oaks, we were having breakfast, and he was saying, yeah, and he's super like, he's like a true 7. Like he's like, he's got like caffeine running through his veins, and he doesn't need to drink coffee. Like he was like pitching like Texas and Dallas, and he's like, yeah, everyone's moving here. It's awesome. Even people from all around the world are coming. And that's kind of what sold me. Like I knew people from California, the other states were coming. But when he said, this is not just a domestic move, it's a global migration. That was like, oh my gosh, God is not just doing a work for Texas or for people that are trying to come from other states. God's doing a global work. And for me, the 8 years I spent in Korea, I got to see God's work in so many different nations. And honestly, to come back to the States, I felt like it was taking a step back. Like, why would I go from a place where I was seeing God work in Southeast Asia, Africa, South America, in Europe, and just go back to like a local church scene? And then when he shared that, I was like, oh, maybe God's doing something bigger. So that really excited me. And so I think in my own heart, in my own process, like I realized, wow, God is doing something. And, the church planting guru, his name's Phil Claycomb. He actually said that right now, Texas overall, and especially this area, for the number of people that are coming in, they actually need more churches. They are lacking churches right now. And the old thing of like, well, you got all of the mega churches. These mega churches can't really meet the need. And for the large part, like mega churches, they're doing a great job, but I think it's safe to say that a lot of times mega churches, they not cater, but there's like one primary demographic that is drawn to a mega church. But right now, you have so many people that fall outside of that demographic that need a church as well. And so I think that's kind of where AMI fits. I think the Blessing, we're for the transplant, but we're also for the person who grew up in Dallas, who just never felt like they may have fit within that megachurch setting. And so there's a huge amount of people that find themselves within that category. So
a wise man once told me that when a church is first starting to be built, it's like wet cement, right? There's an opportunity to, whether it's carving right words into it or just building a certain type of foundation, there's like a window of opportunity to make the church healthy from the get-go and to like establish a culture that brings people in and that loves on people and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, just kind of curious about y'all's vision in this short window, right? We talked about the hard launch coming up in February. What's y'all's kind of heart for what we want to carve into that cement at this time?
Yeah, that wise man, he definitely is. Dr. Ryan. Yeah. It's funny, like, I think because I like food, I like eating so much. My analogy was Jell-O. Jell-O, you have also that window before it sets and you can put everything you want.
It doesn't have the same impact.
So I think for us, it was, honestly, I think a lot of our members really got encouraged and convicted when he shared that, like, this is that period, that window where we can really set the culture. And I think the first thing was, like, I think already so many of us have been setting the culture. Like, jokingly, he had said, and I hope Pastor Ulysses is not listening to this, but, so one of our sister churches in San Jose, like, the pastor had said, I wish my church would sing. They just don't sing. And then I was like, we don't have a problem with singing. Like our guys are just like, and you guys feel it too. Like during worship, everyone's just like, just so in it, and like God's presence is so thick in that. And I think just people just being in each other's lives, like you can't really coach that. They already brought that in. So I think just that intentionality. I don't feel like people are pretentious either. I feel like people are just genuine. They're open. And so I think that's already setting the culture. People are giving. And the one thing that we want to set is just a missions culture as well. So even though we're a new church, we've already committed to going on missions. And we want to send full-time missionaries. And so I think vision-wise, there's already a lot that's already been written in that wet cement. And I think the few things that we do want, I think we've already seen happening at the church as well. So it's been great.
Yeah, I feel like when we met up for coffee in July, we shared like very briefly that we both, oh yeah, we would like missions. And then the next question you guys asked, oh, would you guys like to go on long-term missions? I was like, whoa, because we haven't talked, in a long time, but it's just a reflection of what is it that's in y'all's hearts, and not being scared to bring that up with members and plant those seeds or push them if that is something that they felt as so God calling. So that was definitely noticed.
Yeah, it's refreshing, because the one thing that really brought me to like my actual faith, what I'll consider like real faith, was the idea of God being like a globally missional God. Like that was the kind of the powerful message that confirmed my faith, I guess, when I was really growing. Actually, there was a point in time where I was highly considering foregoing medical school even to do missions. Not that that's a commitment right now to change course, but
starting to say more signs for them to catch on.
We'll be praying for it.
Yeah, they don't let these things drop. I've seen them hold on to it.
But no, I don't know. I just felt like a flurry of excitement because right now it's hard to see how the missions will look down the road, but I got an excitement anticipating that next stage, because that's coming and soon, I think, even for such another church. And yeah, I'm just excited to be a part of that.
So before we go deeper into that, because I do want to talk about that a little more, I want to close the church planting specifics by just asking what were some of the hardest parts and the greatest joys. For example, Pastor Yoon had shared social media was a hard part of church planting for him. But I love all the stories and the posts. Yeah. And so maybe, I think so. Like discovering something you never knew you had within. So if you haven't, check out at the Blessing Church. But beyond that, like what are some things that like have been a struggle and a joy within this journey?
For the past year, we were trying to develop a team of people that would go out to Dallas. And it was like, I think the hard part was being part of so many journeys at the same time. Pastorally, I had to kind of just pray with them and walk alongside of them. But at the same time, I'm also the guy that's going out and I'm wanting them to come out as well. And so I need to be objective and in a way neutral. But there's definitely in my heart, I was like, man, I want this couple to be there. I want this guy to be there. It'd be awesome. And so my heart was just like in so many of these journeys. And a lot of times, like you would find these people, if they heard about this church plant, they would kind of, I don't know if the word fantasize is right, but they would think, oh, what if I went to Dallas? And maybe something was going on in their life, and Dallas maybe looked like greener pastures. And so they would reach out, and I would start engaging with them and pray with them and walk with them. And it was just like tough emotionally for me, because I felt like, oh wow, everyone's really excited to go. And then slowly you see people saying, well, actually I can't go, I work reasons or for other reasons. And so that was a hard part. It was like getting not rejected, but in a way rejected. It's like you wanted it to happen, but it didn't happen. So emotionally, that was pretty tough for me. I don't know about for Becky, but that was really tough for me to kind of be emotionally invested in these people, and then to not have it pan out that way.
I think like a joy has been, I think for me, especially the Friday nights, just gathering in our home to worship, feeding, and sending people home with food. I don't know why that makes me so happy. And it's like done on such a small scale because we're small. And I don't know why I do this. I don't know what part of, I don't know if it's an Enneagram thing, but I'm already grieving the fact that we'll grow, even though that's the whole point of a church. I'm appreciating and enjoying every Friday, like to the fullest, every second of it. Just the banter and the conversations and the eating and all that. It's just so precious to me to know everyone and what they're going through. So I think the beginning stages of a church plant has been so beautiful. Yeah. And I'm fully present and here for it. So
I miss Fridays.
Yeah, only one of us can go at most. But
we miss you guys.
We love it too. And I think I also am grieving the bigger parts ahead, which is exciting, but there's like that intimacy in the small numbers, and I think we're so grateful that we get to be a part of the small number time, like that's this season. But that makes, and probably Enneagram 4 thing. But yeah, I think there is so much to be excited for. And I did want to make sure we touched upon the purpose I have with this podcast is even directed towards Korean community. And I love that you guys touched upon, right, like this intersection of globally, but also locally. And I think a lot of people ask, like, why would there need to be a church in Dallas? But it just felt so right when I even heard that you guys were planting here. I will say when I looked up the church plant coming here, I only looked at it through the website and I saw Yoon Lee. And this is totally not, I don't know if stereotypical is the word, but I was like, oh God, please don't let him be like Fabi, you know, like, and that just is a reflection of, I think, some hurts I have within the church and specifically like growing up in a Korean church, right?
Yeah.
And that can be so different for so many of us, but there's a lot of that within a lot of our hearts. And for me to have prayed that, like, and if you meet Pastor Yoon, he's not Fabi Yoon Lee that I had in my mind for a second, which is nothing bad about it.
I can try to be.
I think partly for Matt, right, and I was praying for us together, but also just being real, like my own hurts, right? And for people that might be listening, what would you say? Like, it doesn't have to be like, don't worry, guys, I'm not this way or something like that. But what would be something you would say to someone listening that does carry those hurts in them?
You know, so when I was thinking about this, it was really interesting because my own journey, it carries a lot of those hurts as well. You know, back in the first church I was serving at, I had left after 6 years saying or vowing to myself, I will never work at a Korean church again. You know, it's funny. I never make vows, and you know, because like after that, I ended up working at the largest Korean church in the world. And you know, it'd be easy to say, you know, just like, oh, forget the Korean church. They don't know what they're doing, and just really dig into them in that way. But I guess for someone who also went through this journey, I realized that God had blessed me tremendously through the Korean church. You know, I know it's got its flaws and faults, but I mean, if it wasn't for the Korean immigrant church, I don't think I'd be where I am right now. And I think throughout this process, God has allowed me to look back and to be appreciative of that, to be grateful for that. So I would say, you know, one word would be healing and reconciliation. I guess, you know, healing, to allow God just to heal whatever those wounds may be. And, you know, I've had things that really did hurt me as well. And just reconciliation. I mean, I'm not saying that you need to literally return to that church that, you know, hurt you. But whatever was going on inside, to allow God to minister to that part, to lay it to rest in a way that is, you know, really blessing to both parties, and to bless the Korean church, you know. And I think there's just so many attachments and so much, you know, baggage that's still there. But I think if we really invite God into that place in our hearts and lives, that God can really bring that about. And I guess the second word is calling. I think the sense that I get when Dallas natives check out our churches, perhaps surprise or curiosity, or what is this? You know, I think for myself, growing up in Chicago and a lot of our other transplants, we grew up in the Korean church and are familiar with that paradigm. And at the most, we might have seen an EM come out of a KM, but to see something like the Blessing Church or other AMI churches can be quite uncommon, maybe for places like Dallas. There's something to get used to. There's like a period of acclimation to this new paradigm, a new type of church. And with this switch of paradigm from KM to EM to this like autonomous church plant comes a call to take the baton, to plant, to serve, and to lead. And it's interesting, you know, children are not supposed to stay children. You know, Jaden and Evan, they're cute, you know, they're so adorable, but you wouldn't want them to stay, you know, like waking you up, you know, in the middle of the night and having, you know, to change their diapers. You want, your dream for them is to become men of God. And I think for a lot of us, we may be married, we may have careers, we may have our own kids, but yet perhaps maybe church-wise or spiritually, we might feel stuck, that we haven't moved past this paradigm of KM, or parents and children. And perhaps this is the time to move past that. You know, we have people that have left their cities, who've sold homes, left their jobs and families to come here, feeling the call of God to plant the Blessing Church. And you know, I'm not saying it's easy. It will be hard. It will be challenging, but I definitely believe it's worth it. So, yeah.
Can I add something to that too?
Yes.
I think just like encouraging our listeners to think critically about their walk with God, kind of discerning what was cultural and what was biblical, and appreciating that, that there's Korean culture and there's good in it, but how are we making our decisions, and what does church look like? And I think, I don't know, we want to be part of that journey where we can help redefine what church is, what body should look like. And I think especially as we are predominantly Asian, even though we aspire to be global, but right now God is bringing us a lot of Asians and hurt Asians. Mm-hmm. And I think we would love to be a part of their healing process of just learning that Christianity is performance-based, and it's, so you have to do, and you have to keep doing. And sometimes you just have to sit and I don't know, wait before the Lord, and or even shame-based. You don't want to share so much. It's always just, things are fine. Things are good. And to be able to be in that open book at a church. And so I think a lot of those things just kind of having to be addressed is a good start for a lot of these members that are returning to the church hurt or coming to the church with baggage.
If you think you might be feeling depressed, stressed, anxious, or overwhelmed, BetterHelp, the sponsor of this episode, is here for you. BetterHelp offers a broad range of over 20,000 licensed therapists who are trained to listen and help you. Plus, you can get 10% off your first month with my code, betterhelp.com/Kohler. With BetterHelp, you can talk to your therapist in a private online environment at your convenience, and all you have to do is fill out a questionnaire to help assess your specific needs before getting matched with a therapist in under 48 hours. Then you schedule secure video and phone sessions, plus you can exchange unlimited messages, and everything you share is completely confidential. As a mom constantly working around Jaden's toddler schedule, having my weekly therapy online has been a complete game changer and a huge reason why I have made big steps to better my mental health for myself and for my family. You can also request a new therapist anytime at no additional charge. Join the 2 million plus people who have taken charge of their mental health with an experienced BetterHelp therapist. Don't forget to use my code to get that 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/Kohler. That's better, HELP.com/Kohler. No, I think that's really good. And kind of like to follow up in that is like, what does accountability look like within whether the network or within our church, in the sense of, for people I might know, it was sin committed might have been something hurt that we've experienced, but then how that sin committed was handled or actually hidden from people was even more of a hurt, right? And so I'm curious, like, how you guys choose to spiritually grow yourselves, but also what does that accountability look like as we form our own culture within the Blessing?
Yeah. So I think that question's pointed towards the leadership, and I think, we've seen a lot of leaders fall, and you still see a lot of these stories coming out of the news. I think one of the strengths of being part of this family really is they say, oh, we want to restore these pastors, or we want to bring them back and have them just walk with the Lord again in a healthy and thriving way. But you don't really see it. But for the past 2 years, and even before that, because we were very familiar with AMI, you actually see the leadership of AMI take pastors who have fallen, and they bring them back in. Like they go through a process of restoration. So they're part of the churches, not leading, but they're in the communities, and it's amazing because it's not only the AMI leadership, but these churches will receive these pastors into the fold and help them go through the process of restoration and healing as well. And there have been pastors who have fallen, who have gone through the process of restoration, and now they're back in ministry again, and they're much healthier than they were before.
It's amazing.
And it's like, I think it's really good for the pastor as well, but for the members to realize, oh, pastors, it's that whole shame-based culture, like we try to sweep everything under the rug. Like, that's not really gospel-based. Like, Jesus really is in the process of redeeming people, and pastors as well. And so, with all that said, I think the one thing that we have these relationships. So, I'm in constant conversation with our sending church, Pastor Charles. We have our structure set up there where, they're checking in on me. Dr. Ryan now is also part of my life. And even outside of AMI, I've actually got to know local church pastors, and we're in relationships. So it's been a huge support for me. And yeah, it's been a blessing.
I think one thing for me too is as I was going to church on Sundays and seeing you preach, there was like a healing happening too of what I think my hardened heart when I would see a Korean pastor preach. I don't know what it was, but like even just inside of me. And then I think seeing Dr. Ryan, who's an older man, like I don't think I've seen many who I don't know, it was just like a healing experience. And I think that was for me like interesting, like, wow, I just have all these things that I carry within too, that it's not like it's said, right? But there are just healing things happening. And so I just found that to be really cool of how he's allowing me to process just in the daily Sundays as well. So yeah. Is there anything else you guys would like to share about your journey or the church plant before we kind of have some fun questions, I guess?
Yeah. Well, just we're in a new place. We were in the Crosby Rec Center, crammed like sardines, but God's provided it for us. A really cool, hip place, with tons of vibe. And so we're at the Plaza Arts Center in Carrollton. Come join us. Yeah,
still hip. I know,
yeah,
I know,
we're just
right?
hip. We're just too cool. Yeah. So downtown Carrollton, we meet at 11 on Sundays. So yeah, feel free to join us. You'll see Angie and Matt there. And so yeah, look forward to seeing you guys.
I think before we close it out, I think it's also helpful to hear from some members, aka me and Matt. Matt, how have you been blessed by the church, and or what is your favorite thing about Pastor Yoon and Becky?
My black t-shirts.
Oh, that's what I was gonna say.
No, your black t-shirts give me confidence to dress up as little as I feel like I need to for church. So that's helpful too.
That's such a 9 answer, I think. Like the comfort for you.
Yeah, it's great. No, it has been a big, I think, period of time for me. I think our involvement in the church just has been not great, and that's part of us to blame. I think part of the church to blame as well. And I think this really was like a new start that we were confident in, but also nervous about because it's new and the whole thing is new. I mean, the first time we met y'all, I think there was just like an interpersonal enjoyment of just chatting and kind of hearing your personalities and your visions and stuff. That just felt very comfortable. And yeah, I think the church has just kind of reaffirmed that, like, maybe before anything, it's just like feels like a comfortable place for people to just be like a family together. Like it doesn't feel like there's pressure. It doesn't feel like there's performance that's needed. It's just like a safe place to kind of be and to enjoy each other. And I think that spills over into just enjoying like the sermons and the cell groups and the Fridays. There's an excitement to be there that I feel that I didn't previously for a chunk of time. And yeah, I also think there's like a practicality to the way you guys approach leadership that I appreciate. Maybe is that a 9 thing? I'm not very good at the Enneagram. I appreciate when there's just, right, like there's a practicality to the messaging and like the way you guys want to just live life. It doesn't seem kind of fluffed up. And I think the church embodies that. Like we just want to do things in a way that just builds people up. And so, yeah, it's been good. It's been a big thing for me. I think I was at a place for a little while. I blame it a lot on just the busyness of life, right? Kids and residency and med school. It's been a busy 8 years. But at the end of the day, I think I use that as an excuse because I wasn't excited enough in my faith to go beyond that. And I think I'm feeling that now. It reminds me of when, like pre-med school, when I was just really heart abandoned, in tune with God and what he wanted me to do with my life. And I'm excited to kind of trend back more and more towards that. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
My favorite thing about Pastor Yoon is also his black shirt. But I think it's interesting, even Enneagram wise, like how your answer, like your why and the why you said, which is for like you not to have to dress up. But then like for a 2 with a wing 1 or wing 3, like I like knowing what we'll expect too. I agree, like structure builds freedom. And even like, oh, Pastor Yoon will wear his black shirt. Not that like I think like that, but right, that also gives a consistency it's safe. And I think these are all the structure things that you guys were talking about before. I think another pastor once shared like that structure allows you to experience the full freedom, right? And so whether it's a metaphor of the black shirt, which no pressure, you can wear white someday too, right? Or just in general, what you can expect with like those little wet cement characteristic traits. Like you go in there knowing that you're going to then get to experience that freedom you've been hungry for, which I think a lot of listeners and myself have been for quite some time. For Becky, I think like I've noticed I am as a 2, a very vulnerable or a quick sharer, and she like doesn't let that fall. I think one of the prayer meetings, I had shared a little bit about our marriage, and even last Friday when I was there in like the busyness of starting Dr. Ryan's message, like I was like, oh, we have to start soon, like thinking like that. But she's just like, how's your marriage, right? And I think that's like, it just like really impacted me, because I think even those kind of questions were what I yearned for in our community in the past, that didn't feel like that was there because of maybe other functional things too. And so knowing that when I share, or when we share, or like, you know, even potentially sharing about missions in our hearts, right? Like knowing those things won't just like fall in vain. And like, that's a reflection of like how we pray to Jesus, right? But that's how we feel when we get to share with you. And maybe it's smaller number, like advantage right now, but I think that's just from like learning, is like, that's a part of y'all's hearts. Is like a huge thing I've been grateful for. Like a pastor in Korea who we kind of have a connection with, a hurt pastor had shared that you guys were like Jesus in like a time when they felt lonely, like you guys were making food for them like Jesus or something like that. And I was like, oh wow. And I think just like to find people who have been in ministry for so long but can always reflect his heart first is a reflection of where we would want to be. And so yeah. Also, another reason is because on Saturday, somehow I finally, because when I joined this church, I introduced myself as Josephine because one, I just always grew up in a Korean church. So Eunji just somehow happened and it stuck. And then over time, as biblically said, it should not just be on one like Koreanness, right? And so then suddenly people started meeting me, oh, Eunji, I'll call you Eunji, but then it became Yoonji or Eunji, and then, you know, people pleaser side of me, I was like, okay, but inside I'm like, that's not my name. My name is Josephine. But all of that to say, when we were thinking of joining this church, I was like, well, I should go by Josephine because it's not going to be a Korean church and things like that. But at the same time, like I've always heard my name as Eunji when I pray or different things like that, whatever. But my goal was to say, hi, I'm Josephine, but I go by Joey. But I was too scared to ever say the second part. Like, I go by Joey. So then I just said, I'm Josephine. And then it just like, have like all these other feelings with that name as well. Long story to say, on Saturday, I shared that. And then Pastor Yoon and Becky just like made it happen. They're like, okay, you're Joey, right? And then on Sunday, when I went to church, Peter already had a name tag for me written Joey. And I was like, oh my gosh. And then like just random people would be like, oh, I heard you go by Joey now. And they were like, it's very like Joey. But right, you have to, when you're going through a change, you have to make it stick. And it was just like so cool because I've been trying to make it happen in Houston for like the last 3 years, and no fault to the people, but also I said it very shy or very like, I don't know. And it was like unnecessarily this identity thing for me. And for us, we're just laughing about it right now, but even just like support in that, for you guys to say Joey for me and like make that happen, it's like a little metaphorical meaning for me. New wineskins here in Dallas, where I love Eunji and I love who Eunji was in Dallas, but there was a part of me that didn't want just Eunji in Dallas. Long story to say, reveal has happened. Color commentary with Joey.
Joey. You look like a Joey though. I like it. I like Joey.
So cute.
I'm going to be the last one to pick up on this continuously.
It's okay. The more people do it.
You know, I just had a thought. Maybe you can leave Eunji to when God's talking. You said God's talking. So maybe that's a more intimate thing. And then the rest of us can just call you Joey.
Yeah.
So cute.
And sometimes that's why when I say enjoy at the end of the podcast, I'm really trying to go Eunji, Joey, enjoy, whatever.
Coming together.
It's all my little.
There's intention behind all of it.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's my long-winded answer of just little things we've been blessed by at the Blessing.
So we're blessed by you guys.
Thank you. How do you like Dallas now that you've been here?
What's been the biggest like confirmed stereotype?
trucks. Yeah. So many trucks out here. And just big. I mean, it's big and flat.
Yeah.
Like,
Big.
but honestly, like when I first came out in February, it was like the worst week to be here because Monday it was 80 degrees. By Wednesday it was 24.
Yeah,
with ice storms. And I was like,
Oh,
what?
that sounds about right.
I was like, what is this place? And I was like, oh, it's so flat. But then the next trip when I came out, you know, they say the highest place in Dallas is the overpass, right? So I was driving on the overpass and I looked out and like the skies were blue, everything was green. And this big flat became expansive, like the mental shift. And I was like, oh man, this is an expansive place. And so I was like, oh, this is really cool. But that's one stereotype that I think it's a good thing.
We love it. Yeah. People ask us if we miss California. I mean, we do miss parts of it, but we love being out here for sure.
We do.
Yay, stay here. Woo! All right, so quick, who is more likely? And that's how we'll end it. Okay, so I'll ask you a question and they say 1, 2, 3, and then you guys say either your name or your partner's name. Who made the first move? 1, 2, 3.
Yoon.
Oh, okay, so this is the real truth.
Contrast to the story before.
But
So follow up, who said I love you first?
1, 2, 3.
Yoon.
I don't like this game.
I like it. No,
Who wakes up earlier? 1, 2, 3.
Becky.
Oh, what time? Oh, you said like 4 or 5.
I mean, I wake up at like 5:30 for work. Yeah.
Oh,
and
okay,
then
okay,
on the weekends too, I try to wake up early.
Yeah.
Who's the better cook?
1, 2, 3.
Yoon.
Sounds like it with all the roasted coffee made marshmallow.
Another quality Joey wishes I had.
Oh, good job. You tried to switch it up.
Who keeps the home cleaner?
1, 2, 3.
Becky.
This is united marriage.
Okay. Who is funnier? 1, 2, 3.
Yoon.
I'm not sure.
I think he's like low key. He's like ninja funny.
Notice he didn't say Becky. He
Yeah, he didn't say me, so I think it's like he's kind of
Yeah. I get like corny pastor humor, I think.
Who's more likely to throw down at karaoke?
1, 2, 3.
Becky.
For the energy and the singing ability?
I think both.
Both.
Yes.
Yeah.
She just has the talent.
Who is more likely to say sorry first? 1, 2, 3.
Becky.
Yoon.
Oh, that's the only answer that should be different.
That's the only cute divided
You say
one.
sorry first,
I
more,
think you
do
say
I?
sorry first.
Oh, okay.
Oh my gosh, how cute.
Who's the more hopeless romantic?
Sounds like we know the answer.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3.
Yeah. Movie choices reveals that.
And last but not least, who prays more?
Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah. 1, 2, 3.
Becky.
Yoon.
Oh, what another great answer to be opposite.
I'm like really shocked. I feel like you.
No, you pray more than that.
Wow. Oh, and this is the last question I ask all of my guests. If you were to describe each other in a fruit, what would you be and why? That's how
I thought of it.
Okay,
Yes.
go ahead.
You're a mango.
Oh.
Why is
And you're a
that?
mango because, like, you know, some mangoes, they can, like, be, like, tart and, like, sprightly, but also be, like, nice and mellow and, like, inviting. And so I think she has it. She's, like, fun, but also very inviting. So, and smooth.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's nice.
And everyone loves mangoes.
Yeah. So I looked this up. Avocado is technically a fruit, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I feel like avocados are. He's kind of like an avocado because first of all, guac, right? Everyone loves guac. It's like the one dish that everyone kind of goes to at a party. So I feel like he's kind of like that at a party. Everyone just kind of touches base with him and they kind of land on him. But also, I think avocados are very versatile. Like if you need it for a smoothie, if you need it for
That's
a
true.
nice cream, you know what nice creams are?
No, not
It's a
hipster?
dairy free, dairy free
hipster
ice cream.
stuff.
Yeah, healthier ice cream.
It's like
if you-
creamy.
Oh,
Yeah.
you know, Matt.
Yeah, it's creamier. Yeah. If you need it for anything, I feel like he's been very adaptable. I don't know if I read too much into this, but he's very versatile in what the environment is needed, and so he'll just kind of go and do that. And I think, lastly, I think it makes everything richer. And I've always said to him that he's made my life richer, and so it's creamier, richer, and so I feel like he's like an avocado.
I feel like this is one of the most well thought out answers I've ever heard to this question.
I was going to say durian, but that as a joke.
He was like, "You stink, and no one likes you." I was like, "That's not nice."
Oh, funny. Well, if you've been listening, hopefully, if you're interested to come check out the church, please feel free to. And if you're still kind of like hesitant or want to learn more, because I could talk for hours too learning about you guys, they want to grab coffee.
Yes.
That's something, yeah, that's like something they always say. Maybe they'll make their slow roasted coffee, who knows? But yeah, I think this is just a snippet into what this past 3 months for us have been like and just this community in general. So thank you guys for making time to share today.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you guys.
you.
Thank you.
Well, thanks for listening to another episode of Color Commentary. It's actually been a month since we've recorded this episode, and I can only confirm greater love for this community. From the sweet children's ministry that loves after our Jaden with truth and joy to the powerful prayers I have answered in our marriage struggles and postpartum anxieties, it is such a blessing to have a place we can call home. Many may not resonate with a more religious episode, but I hope for some this can be an encouragement in healing and renewal in your hearts. And if you are in Dallas, hungry or searching for a community of your own, come check out the Blessing Church this weekend, or our official hard launch is February 26th. See you soon! And if you like this episode, go ahead and rate it 5 stars. Thank you. Bye!